And this is a longer version of the comp tier list for 16.3. Now, this is not an exhaustive list by any means, and there will be some comps that I haven't included. The way that I've tiered this list is not just on sheer power level. So sheer power level, you would have kind of Rise way up the top, you would have Baron, Void, level 10, you would have things like Aurelion Sol 2 up the top. I've done it as a combination of what is easy to play, power level, and also kind of just how likely you are to get there, as a combination. Now, so this probably isn't applicable for people who are at the really, really high end, but for people who are generally within that like low masters down to plat, it's probably going to be pretty good. And yeah, so I'll go through them and I'll give my reasoning for each. I will go from top to bottom. So the most consistent one that I've picked is the Yanara Ionia line. I think it is incredibly good if you have the XP and if you have the gold, and there's a couple of other ones, basically any of the ones that aren't the one cost units at 3-star get more, or the 3-star units get more. Any of them are pretty okay, but the gold and XP ones are the best. If you have good items for it, so you need IE, if you can get like a Titans, or if you can get Guinsu, you can tempo it really well. Like Ori can hold items, Jin can hold items. You can unlock Set on level 8, who's, you know, pretty powerful and is a guaranteed 5 cost on 8. You can then cap your board out a bit later by dropping in some 5 cost, drop down to 5 Ionia. It's pretty strong. You're probably not going to win all the time, but you know, you can very consistently top 4, and every now and again you can win out, which is good. Similar, I've got the Belveth GP kind of board in there. I guess you could also play this as kind of a general 4 Void, but Belveth focused. I think if you have melee items and melee units, like frontline units that are dropping, it's a good line to play in. It's probably not going to be massively contested. People aren't playing Bilge, so you know, you're likely to, if you want to try and chase GP3, you can probably go that. If you want to get Belveth, it's not always that contested. Most of the Void players are going to play around Kai'Sa and maybe not have Belveth in there. Again, you can win out sometimes, but it's, you know, it's not going to set the world alight. But it's a solid, consistent comp, and if you're struggling and you have, you know, some frontline items, yeah, worth a shot. Demacia with Lux, really, really powerful. You know, you can win out with 7 Demacia and Galio 2, or Galio 1 if you get to 8. Realistically, you want to drop down to 5 if you can get something like Shyvana 2-starred, if you can get Fiddlesticks 2-starred, things like that. Galio 2 is going to be the big one. You want to get tanky items like D-Claw, maybe a Bloodthirster is good. You can get anything. So he scales off magic resistant armor, and he actually can do a lot of damage if you put those items on him. And Lux, you know, Gunblade, Shojin, JG, all really good. You can tempo into it by playing Sona, or if you get an early Piltover, you can lock Oriana, who's really, you know, quite powerful and will probably tempo you up to 8 a little bit easier than Sona would. And yeah, solid comp. I like playing it. It's really good. You get a really clear opener from the start, and if you get a spatula, it's just a little bit better. Kai'Sa's good. The AD is slightly better than the AP, for sure. And you know, if you can get into that board where you've got maybe like 4 Void, 4 Bruiser, or 4 Void, 4 Juggernaut, and you can maybe have another carry in there. Maybe it's a Belveth. Maybe you can get a 9 and you can get a Ziggs in. It can be really powerful board. And also with Kai'Sa unlocking on 7 now, you no longer really have to sack around by putting items on Cogmore, and just basically losing because you have no good carry. You can do it on Creep Rounds, you can do it on, yeah, you can just do it a lot earlier, and it's a lot better to play into. I think it's pretty solid. Rift Herald is still arguably the best 4-cost tank in the game, and if not, then he's at least very close. So yeah, solid comp. You can cap out again if you get to level 9. You can get like Ziggs in, for example, and it can cap up pretty high. But it's a solid line and not too hard. Aurelion Sol, I probably got a little bit higher than it should be. Maybe it should be kind of maybe more behind like Echo. It can be really, really powerful. Even Aurelion Sol, without having like kind of stacked up the Stardust too much. And with 1 star, it can still do quite a lot of damage, especially when people aren't playing as many high cap boards now, with it being harder to get to 9. Realistically, people are still working the comp out, and a lot of people are end up going 8th trying to get there. It also does often, unless someone maybe pairs with Diana who still isn't fully worked out, it does often end up being the only carry. So if it does end up getting taken out by like good positioning, or maybe someone has a set in the right place, then it can kind of lose that way. It's still good, still very good, but I think it just needs a little bit more work. But it is very powerful. I would expect it to get maybe toned down a little bit in a future patch. Orianna, not too powerful. Powerful, it is very good. It's not too well known. I think it's getting more popular now. Orianna 2 is pretty strong. It can tempo you into the Invoker line with Lysandra really well. It can tempo you into Demacia really well. Or if you want, you can reroll it. You can reroll it around Loris for Warden and the Freylord board with Braum and Lysandra. You can try and get like Volibear if you want as an unlock. Realistically, you can play it around a blah blah. I can't remember his name. Sejuani, her name. Sejuani 3 can be a good tank. If you're not really getting any drops of those, then you can also push levels, play like around a Braum 2, or drop some other tanks in there. It's a really solid line. I wouldn't chase the 6 Piltover. I don't think it's necessarily worth it, but you know, if you've got an Orianna and a Seraphine and Lysandra, you've got 3 really good carries there, and you've got a half decent front line, so it's a solid board, especially if you get early Piltover and AP items. Archangels is really good on Orianna, and of course, like if you get Bard, I guess you could also play Orianna in the Ixtal line as well. Yasuo, if you get early Yasuo, you get something like is it Worth the Wait? For Yasuo is really good, or if you just happen to get loads at the start, or reroll augment. Yasuo into Ionia is really, really strong. Especially if you don't have to roll too much, and you can still go and play the normal Ionia board and just have Yasuo and Yone in there over 2 of the kind of lesser units. Really, really strong if you get those AD items, like fighter items, early, and you can get them going. You're probably not going to play it too often, but when you do and get it online, it can be really, really powerful. It's basically this board, but better, but I have it lower because it is harder to get online. Echo, similarly, it's the reason that it is maybe a little bit lower than some would say. Although I think it's probably a fair reflection. It can do really well, and it can win out games. Most likely, though, you're going to come 2nd or 3rd, maybe 4th, because there is a good chance that you're going to be contested. And the zone line, it's still not fully fleshed out, I would say. Jinx is not that reliable. Yeah, it's not too crazy. I think there's still some tinkering to do, but it is a good line. It was getting powerful last patch, and it wasn't touched that much. But just for the fact that it's probably going to be contested, there's normally at least 2 people in a lobby who try and play it. Maybe it's not too crazy just at the moment, but still very good. Out of the 3 items, it is Titans first for sure. And then you want Bloodthirster. I guess you could do Hodge, but Bloodthirster's better. And then Guinsoo is good, but realistically, if you get an artifact, drop Guinsoo. Or realistically, you could do like a JG or Giant Slayer. Guinsoo is not a requirement by any means at all. And then on to Ixtal. The Ixtal, this is reroll rather than tempo, but you can do both. They really, really like buffed the reroll quest on Ixtal, and then they pulled it back a bit. It's still good, especially with Orianna getting a bit of a buff. It's a solid line that you can play into. Are you going to win out? Sure, you might get Brock and win out, but it's a solid comp. It is a bit further down because it is tricky. Ixtal is always going to be tricky. Knowing which quests to take when and pulling those off, but if you do, it can be really good, especially those later cash outs, and when you're getting into like the 700 level, if you manage to get there, are really, really powerful and can help you win out. Shadow Isles as well. Shadow Isles is okay. I maybe have it a little lower than others. I just don't find it that strong, and maybe I'm doing something wrong. I will hold my hands up if I am, but I think it's just solidly okay, and you're probably aiming for like a 4th. Maybe a 3rd if you get Thresh 2 online, and maybe some of 5 cost, but it's okay. If you get an early Viego 2 and you have some items to slam and you don't really have that much direction in another way, Yeah, why not play it? It's pretty good. Um, yeah, there's not that much to say about it really. Thresh 2 is really important. Callista 2 is kind of okay. I'd say it's a little bit maybe on the touch on the weak side, which I know they buffed it slightly a couple of times, but I think maybe it just needs a little tweak. Not much, just a tinsy tweak to make it, a bit further up in line with other forecasts. Rise is further down purely because of the change to going level 9. It's harder now. It doesn't seem like a lot when I speak to people who maybe are not as they don't waste as much of their time on TFT as I do. It's 8 gold, but realistically 8 gold is one round. The chances of you win streaking all the way to 9 are incredibly low. Especially the higher you go up in elo, the more likely people are to play stronger boards early, and you're not, less likely to win streak all the way. So what are your options? You take 2 or maybe even 3 econ augments to get all the way there, and then you might lose to someone who's got 2 combat augments, or you might be lacking items. There's many variations of Rise. You can play Bilgewater, which I wouldn't do because Bilgewater's terrible. You can play around things like Ionia. You can play around Freylords. You can play it around Zorn. They also removed things like World Runes, which was really good for Rise. I think it's still very good once you can get it online, especially if you compare it with someone like Ziggs, who's good. But in general, just because of how much harder it is to get to 9, I've got it a bit lower down. For Rise, generally, you'll put like Morello's, just AP items are good. You want to have, I think it's Ionia or Yordle or Noxus, I believe, are all ones that split. Can I check? No, it's not Yordle. You want to have Noxus. It's too far down. Let me read. Right, Bilgewater, but I wouldn't because it's bad. Ionia splits, so Ionia blasts split an additional time, dealing extra damage, and Noxus goes through other people as well. You basically want these so that it can hit multiple targets. It's good to have things like Morello or Void Staff on Rise, so you want them to be able to hit multiple targets. But yes, difficult to get to, but still good. Seraphine, there's people who are strong believers in like the Seraphine boards. I think they're just okay. I guess if you're playing it with like an Oriana reroll, good, but I think it's solid. It's fine. It's very similar to the Lissandra board. I think they're both in a pretty fine spot in terms of forecasts. Generic AP items on Seraphine, generic AP items on Lissandra. Okay, like decent enough frontline. I think having them together as duo carries is pretty good, but again, I'm not massively convinced on Seraphine that they're like overtuned in any way or super strong. I think they're just fine. Middle of the road, fine. Probably get a 4 for a third unless you super high roll. And then everything I've said here is equally as applicable to Lissandra. I would maybe actually swap those just with Lissandra having the option to play a Zillion or maybe get into Volibear. I think makes it a little bit stronger. But both pretty good. You can tempo into them AP lines. Now, Warwick. I know there is some very strong Warwick believers. I want to be one, but I'm not. Warwick, in my head, is fine. They are still being worked out. I would say that they're a good duo carry if you're playing the Echo reroll. I think they're not a bad sway to help you tempo. I can see a world where you maybe try and drop them into an Ionia board, but I think that's a stretch. But just for the quick striker, it can be good. Don't get me wrong. If you're playing a zone board, that's pretty powerful. If you can get like Ziggs online, you've got Echo going, you've got Sins running around to be in the nightmare. Yeah, I can see it being good. I just think it's not quite there yet. I think it needs 5 zone to be playable in a half decent spot, but it's easier to unlock. You get it on level 7 now, so maybe that will push it up in the future once people experiment with it a little bit more. But for now, B tier. Yes, and then Aphelios reroll is not something I've played with too much, but I've seen a few people play it, and I've seen some discussions on it, and I've seen it in some of my games and some of the stats. I think it's okay. Um, Playing it with it's basically the same as playing it with bruisers, but the defenders are a little bit better. Similarly, the defenders are going to be harder to hit, especially with a lot of people are going to be playing Vi, a lot of people are going to be playing Nico. So yeah, the defender version is a little bit better. For Aphelios, you want things like Kraken and Rageblade. It's standard AP kind of marksman items. And then reroll it with Bard. It's not too hard to get to. It's probably not going to be contested most of the time, and also Bard gives you those either free rerolls or free econ, even though it's slightly less than it used to. But I think it's just a solid, okay-ish comp. You're probably going to go fourth, unless you kind of get a Velos 2, you get your board 2-starred really early, and then you can maybe like kind of win through most of the game and bleed out to maybe like a third. But realistically, I don't think it's super powerful. So. And then Bilgewater, there are still people who believe in Bilgewater. I think there will be a way to play it. I just don't think someone's worked it out yet. I think the only way to play Bilgewater and it not be terrible is if you get it online really early. You can win streak through stage 2. You can win streak through stage 3. You can win streak through most of stage 4, and you can get to 9, and then the fact that Bilgewater isn't that good will be made up for the fact that you can get a bunch of 5 costs online. Because Tom Kent is still going to be good, MF is still going to be good, but the trait itself is just not as good. You're not going to be able to get as many items, you're not going to be able to get your upgrades as quickly, you're not going to be able to get the stats as much. Especially if you're going to try to reroll TF or Graves, I just wouldn't. You're not going to be able to get those as quick. You're also not going to get Tom Kench as quick. So yeah, I think if you're forced to play builds like I was the other day when I clicked start a kit, which was a bad idea, and got given Alawi and Misfortune, I managed to win streak for the most part, get to 9, put a couple of 5 costs in, bleed out to like a third or fourth. Once I came up against good things, I think that's the best that you're hoping for. The other win out route, if you have to play builds, or if you are such an obsessive builds player that you really really want to play it, stay on 8, keep 7 builds in, and go for MF3. It's probably not going to be contested. You can get copies of MF in your shop. That is a win out, potentially, that you can do. I don't think it's something that you can rely on, but it is something that is a possible route if you find yourself having to play builds. And of course, I've definitely missed out a bunch of comps. Yordles, Vagar, I missed out. I think it's probably around kind of A-ish tier, like maybe mid A tier. I haven't played it. I don't really play a lot of Yordles, so I can't speak too much on it. Other things that I might have missed out is Annie. I think Annie's probably B tier, but again, I haven't played much of it this time. Mel and Noxus, probably B. Again, I haven't played too much of it. Zehen is okay if you play it around, it's kind of okay because you're playing it around Demacia, or you're playing it around Ionia with Lux or Yanara. The Shurima line is like here, I guess. It's okay. It can cap high, but it's hard to. And yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some other comps that kind of come out of the woodwork. Maybe a couple, and there might be another reroll comp, Rek'Sai reroll, SSS tier. But for the most part, if I just get rid of all the ones that I've just chucked in there, despite having not played them, that is what I would say is the general tier list at the moment, when you count it as a combination of combat power and ease to hit, and also taking into account whether or not you're likely to be contested. Don't get me wrong, you're likely to be contested on these, but I just think it's not too hard to get there. And yeah, any questions, or if you're thinking I am completely wrong and you want to call me washed and you want to tell me how bad my takes are and that realistically Warwick is S tier and I should be playing it every game, then let me know, comment, do whatever. And yeah, I'm going to try and do more of these tier lists. I'm going to try and do more kind of how to play certain comps. So I'd go into a bit more detail around items, how to tempo, what to play in stage 2, what to play in stage 3. And yeah, so keep a lookout for those. I'll also be doing like shorter videos, like little shorts and stuff for TikTok, where I'll kind of go over item tier lists, 1 cost unit holds, 2 cost unit holds, 3 cost unit holds, and I'll do a series where I run over the best items and some alternatives for kind of all the forecasts and maybe some of the reroll lines as well. So yeah, if you want to see all of that, then do the whole like and follow and subscribe and send a smoke signal up, and yeah, all of that stuff. But yeah, have a good day.